This is Joan Creighton, July 14th, 1994, sitting in Cleo Booth's apartment, about to discuss some things about Capilano Golf Club in the days past. Cleo, tell me your membership number.
My membership number is 612, which I think is about 12 because the male population, I imagine, got the first 500 or 600.
Well, that is probably the oldest one extant now of active members.
I would think so because
Yeah.
I don't see any the men playing around that are any older than I am.
And what prompted you and your husband to join Capilano?
Um,
And what year?
we joined Cap. What prompted us to do it was that we both wanted to live over on this side where there were trees, and we when they opened the properties up, we came over and looked at all the lots and everything like that. And very interestingly, there was only the lower part of the properties was open,
Mm.
But right behind, across the street from us, there was going to be a polo ground. Did you know that?
Oh no, I didn't
And there
know
was
that.
going to be a church. These two big lots. And then right on our corner, there was a 4 or 5 acre lot running all around, and down nestled in front of it on the lower street on Eastcott, there was this one row lot, half an acre, and they were all smaller lots. And we thought this was wonderful because we liked the English style everything, and we were going to build a Tudor house. And we thought, there we are, we'll buy this lot, and we can do what we like with it, and we'll have this brown Tudor house. And then these English people that were supposed to come from Britain and buy all the big lots will buy the 5 acre lot, and they will keep the trees, and it will be lovely. So we bought that lot. This is all my husband, I'm just quoting.
Yes, yes.
So we bought the lot, and we started to build. My husband designed the house himself, and then got the architect and Northy, who was a very good builder, to build for us. And it was we called it a BC Tudor. It was 2 stories, but it was all brown and white and everything we liked. And we started to build. The war broke out. The Second World War broke out in September, and we had just started to build then, and we were finished by Christmas. And we moved in, and to tell sort of the end of it, a year later or so, when we were arranging our garden and everything, and we were talking about putting in hedges when there were 2 or 3 people building near us. Kenny Black was our neighbor friend, and we were going to have the hedges, and the other people at those times all wanted front lawns, and everybody else was building white garage houses. There's a fad for it. Every other place was, except a chap beside us called Riminozzi. He was the head of the concert master at the symphony at the time. He built a big white modern house, and we built a 2-story brown house. And we came home one day from being done, and the tractors were in, and they were clearing all this 5 acre lot behind us and dividing it into acres.
So your hope for that.
Yeah, we were going to be this cozy brown house with all the trees behind us. But we had a nice view down because it had been on the road, the old Haddon Road ran up there, and the people from Spurway that had horses used to ride up and down beside the creek. And our lot was all over where Kenny lived. The soil is very, very good and very loamy, but right where we were, it was all sand and everything like that, and we didn't have there wasn't a worm in it. I had to bring worms from Shaughnessy.
Yes,
that was true, and because it was a riverbed, and it was right beside what was Haddon Road, which ran up the Covels, and the people used to ride. So we built our house right on what was their riding path.
Now, when your house was completed, was the original clubhouse? Did it exist?
No, they hadn't started to build that. So oh yes, they did, because we had been coming over prior to that. As soon as that golf course was opened, we didn't belong to any golf course. We'd just been married at the same time as the property was going on. We had been coming over and playing there and paying $1.25 or something like that to play. And the clubhouse was down, that place on the
Oh, where the
on the
old,
second fairway.
Yes.
That was the clubhouse, and Jock was there and being very nice to us. So
where the maintenance shed is
yeah, the
now.
maintenance shed
Yes.
was the clubhouse, and we had a very, very nice time. And then of course, the minute they said that they would be a golf club, we joined, and there was some, it wasn't a club like an ordinary club. It was a company that owned it, and they were very courteous and nice because we were the first property owners there, and that continued all during our association with the club. The staff and the management was especially kind to us, little things, and considered us sort of special members. We really were.
Well, I think you very much
We had
were.
lovely. Our friends, we feel the staff was as close to as family.
Yeah.
Really, it became our second home. And then they built the new clubhouse, and they had that big, beautiful reception. Very gorgeous. The woman that had been the catering manager and receptionist at Jericho was, the most, and she came over and ran it. They had this wonderful buffet, and all the people, and so many of them were old Jericho members, because the Jericho members, were offered free entrance to to all the golf clubs they could. So it was just a question of them to which they transferred, and most of them went to Shaughnessy, of course, because their friends
Because
were
of
over there.
in town,
I would
yes.
if I'd lived on that side. So that they came over, and it left us with a membership, which relatively was city side, you see, and there were very, very, very few couples from this side and it was almost impossible to get a quota of girls out to play on Tuesdays.
On Tuesdays, yes. I
And
was going to ask you about that.
And then you see, then the war came right on, and Gertrude Davidson was captain during the war, and I think she stayed captain for several years, and nobody was going much to the club. We were just going to the club all the time, because Bowers, who he was called Mr. Golf in those days, who was American, and the Morrises, people who had lived on the 13th but moved away, and Kenny Black and ourselves, we made an eightsome who played bridge and went up there to dinner, and there was another group, you wouldn't remember the McDonalds and the Kings and McCarthy's lived out the Caulfields, and they had a group, and I don't think there was anybody in the club for dinner at all except us. We would go and have a cocktail someplace, people, and then we would go up there for dinner and then come back and play bridge, and then it was fun. The funny part was it got like when those women do competitions, you began to have something before you left at night, and you would eat, and really it was like a eating competition. But Kenny and Stan both liked it, because I think it was very, very nice. Anyway, that went on for several years, and there would be nobody there at dinner at all most of the time except us. And I think the dinners were $1.25 or something like that. Real good dinners. So that we did feel, in a little way, as if, like seniors do, we feel as if we owned the club a bit, because we were the only ones using it.
I can quite understand that. Well, when Jock went away to the war, then, but the pro shop carried on with.
I forget
others,
exactly
or-
how it carried on, but there never was any idea of really replacing them. I suppose I've forgotten who the person would be there, and Kenny was there. Kenny was the main focus in the club, always having been champion, the best golfer, and then there were several good women golfers that reigned for years a bit. Daphne was one, and then Kay Farrell was a big leader in the club, and she was the president, the women's LPGA sort of business out here. But they were all better golfers than I was. Most of Stan and I were the same way. We just wanted to play golf for fun. And I had played not when I was a child, but in my hometown, the little golf course was formed from a farm when I was about 14 or 15. The boys all came, and we would go out and play. Back in the way that we played, on the farm that was made into a golf course. And when I went back to saw it about 40 years later, it's just one of those beautiful Ontario cars with the great big trees and green. But at that time it was just a hill. There was an old farmhouse on the top, and we would walk out from town to half a mile or mile, or what would be, and have lemonade and a sandwich for 15 cents, and then play golf.
Those were the days.
And the boys would tell the girls how to play golf. You know, we did whatever they said. But out here, Daphne was, of course, was a long time best player, and Nora and Winnie. There were a lot of them that were in the silver division, but I wasn't. I was just footling around and then when the year I was one of the people who really didn't want to be a captain. I thought captains should play golf well and really work at it. But the women that were in the committee were my friends, and they were determined I would. So that time I was doing so. Anyway, I said, after a year or so, I said, all right, I would play. And really, this is true. Winnie McLean, who was a very good golfer, and Nora, both coming from Jericho, and who were they were both very experienced, and so they took over for a year and waited for me to be captain. And Nora, who had both been secretary and captain, and Winnie, who had both been secretary and captain, honestly, I have to be really and truly honestly, they did the golfing work. And Kay Farrell, who I always liked too, but she was, in those days I was tall, you know, and for my age group I was tall, but Kay was taller and bigger than I was. And I was scared of her as far as golf was
she was
concerned,
a pretty
you know?
imposing
Yeah,
figure.
she was pretty imposing. And so they were making me play, because I was prancing around 20 or 19 handicap, and I would go out, and I'm not fooling, but there were days when I got along that I had 10 or 12 shots to spare to be in the silver division on the 18th hole, and I would, and Kay, they said, Kay, I'm just going to go with you and take you around, Cleo. And she took me around, and I came in the silver division.
That's lovely. Out of sheer fright.
Yes, I think I always did have. When I got to about 15, I might have I sliced a lot anyway. I may have had some bad shots, but nearly always by the time I came to the 18th, I really had enough to get there, you know. It was a little different. I don't know, the handicap was a little different about the course. I think was 1 or 2 strokes different than it was later. But really, I don't think I ever would have done it, because I would always get food in them.
What about the clothes you wore? Skirts and things, no shorts or slacks, I don't suppose, to start.
Most of us, a lot of the girls, women that came hadn't golfed before, and basically they wore their suit skirts, short skirts, and the handkerchief with the
last
tie.
yeah.
But I had played golf a lot as a young person in the East, and went on and off, and I had sort of didn't seem to change much. I think I'd already had the twin setters, but that's what we mostly played, the skirts and twin setters and the twin sweaters. And in the summer, there were no shorts at all. That was 19, except on the beach, that sort of, well, and we wore nice dresses. We wore the kind of dresses that people were wearing the last few years that I don't like as dresses, with the buttons down the front, you know. But
the shirtwaist style.
Yeah, or shirtwaist style, made a blue skirt and a plaid blouse, or the twin setter sets. We all had the twin sweater sets. Funny, we all had those in the cashmere.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, but these golf dresses, they were very nice on the golf course. I remember I had a brown linen with buttons all down the front, but I always liked a little belt. They had little belts. Now they're wearing them, hanging down the front.
Yes,
Like them. But
and I
there
suppose
was
there
no
was,
shorts at all in those days.
and of course, no need to make a time for your
Oh no,
golf game.
no problem. The year I joined, the year they wanted me to be captain was, I guess, maybe I was talkative or something. Oh, and we had a toll from the bridge over, and my toll bill was just frightful because I phoned people up and said, "Aren't you coming out on Tuesday mornings?" and things like that. And up till then, we had a hard time sometimes getting 8 out, and then they didn't come to spring luncheon, and we got 56 out that year. So I felt, and then also when I went to the CL, to the meetings, I wasn't as frightened because I had the handicap, and I could argue a bit about handicaps. It was the day that we wanted to have more logical handicapping. They were handicapping you on one game. You could come.
Yes, so I gather
Yeah,
that
I
you'd be stuck with it
yes,
for.
you played 2 or 3 good games in your life, and I remember later on when Anna or somebody was thinking of, weren't playing so much, maybe I won't quote who it was, but one of the girls was a better player, said to me, "Oh, I couldn't hack around under 100. I always thought it was great getting around under 100. So, I think 92 was the best I ever had in my life, or only about once or twice. But the handicapping system was ridiculous. When the first time when I played golf, the first game I remember, I was 29. That was the way I played. And the next time, Jeannie Beardmore and I were trying to get our handicaps together. And of course, Jeannie was a good player. And I don't know what she was, but she went down very. I went from 29. And then the next time I played, I was 24. And the next time I played, I was 21. And then I stayed at about 21 or 19 then. I was very happy there. But Jeannie went right down. Of course, she was a good player.
She was
and
did you have competitions with other golf clubs too?
Yes, they had.
The start?
You see, they were all Jericho players. They carried on just the way the clubs had carried on. Team games, and we had one team, of course. There was, I never could like it because I've always had a funny back. We won't say it's a terrible bad back. I'm always here to, but I was told, when you're young, oh, you have a beautiful loose swing, but you ended up with your ball about 20 feet in the rough. And I had that kink or whatever it was that I never followed through well. So no matter how my game wasn't too bad, I was always having these unexpected slices. So I had no hopes of being good, and I didn't mind anyway. But the team games went on. The team games were very good and very good because we had a few very good players. There was a Grace Thompson that played quite well, and Daphne, of course, as I say, was the best. And I think Lana McElrace, well, I think she was a 4 or a 6 or something like that. Nora, Margaret, and Gertrude, they were all through 10s and 12s and 14s. So we had plenty for the
solid
team.
Golf, yes.
And I went to a few of them on request, not very often, but we went out and really enjoyed them. They were more, I guess they were just as competitive as they were now, but the team games are fine.
Well, you've seen a lot of changes in the clubhouse itself. I mean,
Yes.
how many major renovations has it gone through in its lifetime?
Yes, that was interesting because the year I was a captain was the year they were renovating. And that was very interesting because you wouldn't remember, but we had this was a nice little place. The place that is the east corner now, where the fireplace is upstairs, all through there was a little blue room, we call it. It was an outside veranda with wicker furniture, and it had been like made a room, and that was the ladies' room. So when we started to go downstairs, Bay Lyons was a very good person in the club. She'd been a Jericho golfer, and was really interested, and Lillian, of course, Lillian Baldwin. Those
Yeah.
two were very interested in the clubhouse, the manipulation of the, or the management rather, and all that kind of thing, because they were experienced golf members. And so when they were going through the designs and everything like that, Lillian and I went to all the other golf clubs, not all of them, but we went and looked at their lockers and counted them and everything, because she knew all about things like that, management. And I think we decided that there weren't more than, there would be more than 60 members, and I think that was 60 we got full lockers, because we knew we were going to be crowded anyway. And then Bay took very much an interest, and I think Betty Newsom did too. Betty Newsom, I think, because Betty was a year or two behind me on the committees. I think, as I recall it, sometimes I get mixed up with things, but I think Betty Newsom and Bay and I were the ones that were harping on what accommodation the women would get.
Yes.
And you've heard about what they designed, maybe.
No, tell.
The design that the people, the men's section, had I don't put it that way, but the management of the club was designing.
Yes. With perhaps a slight bias.
What is our locker room had a big central door, and the central steps. It would have been very nice too. And central steps that ran upstairs, so that on each side of the door there was about 15 or 20 feet left, and that was going to be the ladies' locker room. Well, it didn't go over very well. But as I say, we had a lot of support. We really had to argue about that and where the doors would be and the windows. And Bay was the one, I forget, and she really won something about the windows, and I'd forget the rest of it. But the main thing was that was all. We weren't getting any more locker space, any more ladies' room space than we were upstairs with this little blue room and veranda place. So that worked out well. We all thought we'd won a great battle. Things like that happened later on. And other things happened too that were funny. When we had conference, there were some people in the club that wanted to make it into more of a country club and have a swimming pool around it, and also all kinds of privileges for their wives. The people that had downtown clubs where their wives could use them for dinner and everything wanted Capilano to be the same. And I remember, well, I wasn't one, but one of the women standing up and saying, the women that are already in Capilano just wouldn't stand for that, having everybody coming in. And then the swimming pool effect. There was, when you were driving off the first tee on Sundays and somebody was having a party on a swimming pool down on 13th, you could hear it. Well, if you'd had one right up by the clubhouse, and also if you'd had tennis courts up there. So that, I think all sections decided that it wasn't built. It still is an old, not an old person's club, but it's a very mature membership at our club. Otherwise, there would have been young juniors, and a swimming pool and tennis courts would have made it a different
very
type
different
altogether. So that was generally defeated.
In a way, it's probably just as well for those who don't want that the topography of the area doesn't lend itself as well as
and I think it's better
did.
for the golf club in the city and everything. It's a very good, famous, wonderful club now, and not like a country club, like the small towns have. No,
I think we all feel that the tradition should. I mean, it is such a marvelous setting, and it does have such an interesting.
Yes, it should be. It should have a little more dignity and formality than some of the other clubs. I'm quite with the people that don't want to let it be too informal. I'm informal myself. I like to go in everything I like, but I think as a principle, if you have to choose, I think you should keep it a little on the conservative side. Don't you?
Oh, I do indeed. One thing that in talking about the upcoming renovations, I was pleased to hear from the president, and I gather reflected in the view of the architect, that they would like to have, that when you enter the club, you know it is a golf club. And this is where we hope the Archives Committee will be able to have, some display
Yeah,
materials and
I
things.
think so. That's
that-
very nice. And I noticed one day I was saying to I got one of was somebody, staff at the club, no, about, I was surprised they didn't change the dining room back and be closer to the kitchen, and and they said that even these renovations we're getting now are not permanent, that they are in mind, that there is even little better improvements after they settle down.
Well, I
it's going to
suppose
be-
one always thinks that one can improve, although I'd hate to
No,
think
it was,
in a...
it was some, I forget, it was some discussion about the use of the room that was the old dining room and
yes.
is still next to the kitchen and makes a lovely dining room.
Yes, it
That I
does.
think really, and when you go to the other clubs now, they don't, they mostly have, we went up to Furry Creek the other day and
Oh, yes.
I was quite interested in that. I hadn't seen it.
Yes, isn't that a
Yeah,
phenomenal setting?
financing. I think the financing will have to be phenomenal too.
I think so too. It's not, it's having its difficulties, but we certainly, Capilano has had, I'm sure, some financial difficulties in the past, but
Yes, and they
Yes.
always had that architectural difficulty with the club basically being built north and south when it should have, they couldn't maybe because of, but with the whole course, if it had been more built east and west, and the clubhouse east and west, it would have been an easier club, easier to play and easier for tournaments and things like that.
well, the whole British Properties has gone through such a phenomenal growth,
It's
and
wonderful, isn't it?
when you think of what the lots were at one time and what some of them are selling for today, it's extraordinary. Of course, everything's changed. And
Well, I know our lot, we sold, can you say, at the peak of the Depression.
it sounds a bit of a paradox, but yes, I know
But
what you
that's
mean.
exactly what it was. That was the time we thought we were ready to leave, and it really was the very bottom prices of the district and everything at that time. So now, of course, people always going on, everybody has sold any time, is worrying about that. But we always said that our house wouldn't be torn down because there were only the two larger ones really, and one or two down the street, and big lots. You could build another apartment on build a house. But somebody was telling me the other day that they were up and it's resold again, and some of the people that bought it when we sold it put a lovely apartment in the basement. And so I thought even that would last long. But now apparently they're even down in that area where there isn't a view now, the trees. They are selling. One little friend has the lots are selling for ridiculous prices. A little lot with the little ranch house that's going to be torn down is selling for nearly $500,000. Just a lot. So I don't know what ours sold for, but I didn't think they would build it down because it was all built that if you wanted to add rooms, the plans were there do them, change the garage, put a two-car garage, and there's lots of room for a two-car garage. So, but yeah, I guess nowadays with things going absolute, no wiring and everything, it's cheaper to pull everything down.
So one keeps saying, but I don't know, with the land prices, I'm sure, as we all know, Capilano worries about the taxes and any reassessment and so on.
Well, you just have to get wealthier and wealthier members.
I guess we'll just have to do that.
I'm glad it didn't happen a long time ago. I wouldn't be there.
No, I don't think I would either. And I can remember when Dennis and I joined, we thought it was quite a lot of money, which it was. I mean, everything is relative, as we know.
Well, when we joined, it was just $150 each and $500 to the share.
Yeah.
And the shares, of course, weren't like Quilchena shares or anything where you got money back. And they had sold for $600, I think, 50 years later. But it's all been very, very worth it. To me, it was second home. It always sounds so silly, of home away from home. But when
No,
you
I
don't
don't
have a
think-
family and your friends on the other side, you still keep them socially. Like, I still live. People ask me something about a store on West Vancouver or Dundee. I don't know them. I don't think I was in a store in West Vancouver 2 or 3 times in my life. I'd kept going to town until latterly, and then the malls were there by then,
Yeah.
and settled there. So we were sort of early boudoir people, except for the club.
Yeah.
Huh?
What did you think of when Park Royal
Well,
started?
we thought it was wonderful
Yeah.
because
Was
we
it-
were coming back from town.
And so that was
You
that
see-
wasn't it. You didn't feel that was a sort of a desecration of the entrance
No, because
to
they
the.
had the other little. They had a little, more like an English parade. Remember there before they had a Woodward's and
Yes.
the drugstore and that sort of thing. And believe me, when we was during the war, I worked for the government. I was working with the Japanese relocation, and so
Oh,
both
were
of them. Yes, that's how I met Jean B.
Oh.
At least how I got to know her. We had always had Japanese houseboys, and she had a house girl, and the little girl wanted to come over here or something, and she came over and lived at the house and worked 2 or 3 hours a day. I never and was a hairdresser part time, and so that was how I met Jean. Jean. We'd just do each other on the telephone then, in the early days. I don't know when I think they had joined, I don't know. But anyway, Jean would talk about, I forget her name now, Martha. Anyway, and so Martha worked for us about 3 or 4 years like that. It was a very satisfactory arrangement for a working couple, because we would pick her up on the way back, and she would peel the vegetables and start getting the dinner ready,
Yeah.
and we'd dig in that kind of thing. But after a while, she wanted to go back. She was here, and then she was to get the hairdressing job on the other side, so she went back to Jean. And I was terribly undomestic, I don't like chores, and I never did them. And I had a husband who was very fond of domestic things, so we worked out.
Perfect.
Well, the modern couples are working
Yes,
out like we did, but
exactly.
in those days they didn't. He would really like to cook the meals instead of me and all that kind of thing. Anyway, she went back to Jean, and Jean told me, I don't think she told me the time, but she told me, she said, well, what did you do? It must have been wonderful to train Martha so well. I said that she was far better than when she, and I said, well, the way she got trained was I came back when she came back, and I had no training at all. She just got doing things herself and liked them. No. I diverge, I shouldn't.
Oh no, I think that's very, very interesting. It's all part of
Mm-hmm.
your life and part of Capilano.
Yeah. We all have little stories that we don't tell.
I'm sure. Why did I put this on pause for a minute? Well, tell me about the 50th anniversary and how you.
Well, I mean, it was just so
Yeah.
nice. It was like
Yes.
going back. I went to Toronto University, and Stan went back with me to my 50th, and he met the chaps that I knew when I was back there. They were all by now 10 lawyers and judges and all that.
Right.
And he had a wonderful time. He had more fun than I did. Not more fun, but he really just fitted in with everybody. And so we went back to my 60th. And we were almost hoping to go back to my 70th, could you believe that? So this was the same sort of thing, the 50th anniversary. People turned up like that. We sat with at the first buffet supper and that sort of
Right.
thing. Well, Nora Gregory was one,
Yes.
Jeannie Beardmore,
Right.
those two. And they always had a joke because I was very fond of sweets that I ate all their desserts at this thing, and Jean B was the other. They always, I always teased Jean and me. They just any chocolate cake or cake was left with Jean. So, and there weren't so many, but I remember Jean and Nora. And by that time, a lot of the girls that worked prominent when they were young, and were fun, Monica Marple and those girls, well, Belle Irving she was then, and a lot of us had been young together. They had died off even by the 50th, you see. Although always we were senior. As we played up there, we were, everybody was getting married at the end of the Depression, you see, 1937. And Kenny and Mamie and all of them nearly were in their late 20s. They'd been sort of waiting to get married. Stan and I were in our late 30s. When we moved in there, he would have been 40, and I was about 36, 7, whatever it was. Anyway, wasn't much difference, but we were just, and Barbara, carpenter, and everything. They were near neighbors. They were on head, and so that was the group we were playing with on Sunday afternoons and that was the group we were playing these little parties at night and everything like that. So we were just automatically associating with people that were 10 years different, and it didn't make any difference until when we were in the 60s. We went away for a holiday. We stayed a whole year, and I had some little facial neuralgia. And when I came back, I didn't want to play duplicate bridge with the women, and we played in the duplicate at night, which is very nice up there, for several years. But then we settled down that other couples we made friends with more, and we played, so many. You'd be surprised of the number of couples that played bridge in that bridge that we ended up by playing bridge with them in the evening or having dinner with them or that Sunday. So, but we gradually graduated from playing golf with, and then Stan hurt his foot, then he couldn't play at all. So I played with but I kept on going playing in the regular team, because those are the ones I knew, and the few ones that would be turning into seniors weren't going to ask me to play golf with them anyway. They were their own little groups that played, so that's why I played so long. I think I pulled my cart up there when I was 82.
I'm sure you did. I was going to. You played up until very recently.
Yeah, I didn't. I did once I began to use the cart, which was I think in the middle 80s. I didn't enjoy it so much, and I frankly I didn't. I did enjoy playing with the girls, because as I went out, as I say, the last decent score I remember in the 90s I had when I was about 70, and from then on I was always going backwards the other way, and these girls that were coming in were playing these long balls and playing, and they didn't care what I did, certainly, and so it made lovely games, and so that was why I met so many of the younger ones and knew the committees as they came along, and I really enjoyed those committee girls. Every committee exceeded the other one in efficiency and everything. It was getting like really running, you girls, when you're running an office or something.
There's a fair bit to it now.
Yeah, there was nothing. You see, when I was in, it was only Nora and Winnie doing the hard work. But I used to be amazed. Now, the first person I noticed was Mary Stimpson. When she came in, I noticed immediately a big thing in the change. And then from then on, there wasn't a year that, I think that locker room and the boards and the way it's run is just marvelous now.
Well, of course, the draws, when I think of you trying to hard getting 8 people out, and now, it's not unusual to have a draw of over 100. It's quite staggering. Particularly, as we all know, the problem of not being able to start on 2 nines and
well, you see, with us, there were these few girls here that didn't know each other, more the learning golfers, and then there were these few other golfers that they didn't make up any weren't enough. And so when I was in, I was laughing about the tolls. I was always phoning the town on the tolls. to say one of the ones that I knew or some of these ones I knew, well, why don't you come over? And so we just got going a little better than that was that. But it was a long pull, really. And then poor Lillian was always trying to get going with the juniors, you know, because that was her,
Yes, she
her
was-
dream, sort of.
Yes, she was
and that
very
would come up
active in
year
that.
after year and
Yeah.
just sort of fizzle out.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things I can remember when we joined the club in '65 was punting on the lakes when you had time to look for
Yes,
a
that's
ball
right.
that went. Well, of course now, just not a bit of it. It goes in, and if you can't reach it with
Oh, dear. And I got, of course, towards the end, that I couldn't get over the. I couldn't get over the 11th with any. I would just look at a club, and what's his name, Jerry, was down with the groundsman one day making the. They were going to. We were always saying that there should be a level spot, you know. That
Right.
You didn't have to make that second putt. And they came down when two or three of us were waiting, and were talking about it. They were planning it, the men that settled it, they were going to put this putt in. And when Jerry, I don't know how he knew, Jerry saw me there, and I guess the girls with me, always teasing me about not getting over the cold. They said, well, let Cleo try and see if she can get over from there. So I could, with any club. And afterwards, it used to be a joke. Well, I remember, well, I guess it was the year the year the girls thought it was funny and called it Cleo's Hole, and we gave a prize for it. But all my memories at the club are just so marvelous. And also, I'm going to say something which I think there were an extraordinarily number. Years ago, you used to hear about women not getting along. I think there were an extraordinary number of women up there to have never, ever had any disagreement or altercation. I have never, in all the years I've heard, had anybody where there was quarrelsome or one being wanting to do this too much. Anything. I think it was a marvelous group of women, because we used to hear tales of little things that went on from a few of the older clubs where they were in real scraps about things, but not there. I think they were a wonderful group of. And then, as I say, as I grew older, I certainly should have. They were just lovely to me. I felt, you know, so I obviously was getting so much older, and they were still being so nice.
Oh, well, I think for a very good reason. I think you're a very special member of Capilano and should be treated exactly that way.
Thank you.